What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to TWR. My name is Tavian. This is my world of reptiles, and I hope you are all doing well and taking care of yourselves. If you are new to my channel, thank you so much for coming through. Please hit the subscribe button and ding the bell. Get notified on future content. And if you are a returning subscriber, you are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for coming through yet again. So today we are going to be introducing the second of 3 animals that are newer to this reptile family that I have yet to introduce on the channel. So a little while ago we had a reptile expo and I went to it. I did try to get footage at this expo. Unfortunately, we got outside and we got there and there was the hugest line I had ever seen at a reptile expo. It was the first one I had been to in like 2 years, and it was a huge line and I was like, alright, cool. I did the whole we're at the expo video thing, and then I got inside and immediately became overwhelmed. Just absolutely immediately. I'd not been around so many people in so long, and I didn't even remember how to maneuver the crowds anymore. It was so awkward, and I tried to get some footage. I got quite a bit, but I wasn't necessarily proud of how much footage I got and how I was able to get the footage, so I never even put it together. So you may or may never see that footage. You may or may not ever see that footage anyway. So but I did walk away from the expo with something, and I am super excited to share that with you today. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Tadashi. This little cutie right here is a Uromastyx. As you can see, he is still getting a little used to handling. He is super active. I had to chase him down in his enclosure just to get him out for this video. But yeah, so I'm not going to do a whole overall care when it comes to this species. I'm just going to give you an overall view of the animal, of this particular animal and the species in general. So this is not a care guide video of any sort. It's just an introduction to this animal and the species in general. So this is a Uromastyx. They are naturally found in Africa and Asia. There are some species that are a little bit larger than this one. I believe the Egyptian species is the largest of all the Uromastyx. I am spacing on what species this guy is. I will put it on the screen here so that you know exactly what to look for if you're interested in the Uromastyx. But they are a little bit on the smaller side of the Uromastyx. Now, these are really great beginner lizards, I think, in my personal opinion. They are right there with bearded dragons when it comes to care and handling. I mean, they're close to bearded dragons. I think bearded dragons settle down a little bit more. They're a little less fast. I mean, they can be pretty fast when they're babies, but either way, I think bearded dragons do calm a little bit more and a little quicker, should I say. But it doesn't mean that Uromastyx can't get to that same level. They're super interactive, a lot like the bearded dragons. They're super curious. This guy will come up to the window, looking around, does a lot of exploring, and they're just overall super fun little creatures to watch. What makes them really great is, like I said, they don't get super huge. Even the Egyptian Uromastyx are not outrageous where they can't be handled. They're not like iguanas or tegus or large monitors that will tear you to pieces as they get older. They stay reasonably small, easy to handle, that even a child can handle without actually worrying about damaging it too much. Now, these animals have these amazing little tails here, and a lot of things you have to worry about with a lot of lizards is that they tend to drop their tails as a defensive mechanisms, but these little guys, you don't have to worry about that. They are not going to drop this tail. If that tail happens to get accidentally grabbed when you're trying to get it, it's not just going to fall off in your hand and keep wiggling. It's going to stay attached to their bodies. They don't do that. This tail is actually super important for their defense. They use this tail because when they are out in the wild, they usually like to stay close to areas where they can wedge themselves into rocky crevices. I'm not sure if I'm even saying that right. But to wedge themselves in, they'll keep this tail on the outside, so anything that might be trying to get them or eat them would reach in there and meet face to face with that tail, which is super spiky, super sharp, and it's definitely not something that you'd want a mouthful of if you were a predator. So that's the really important part of their defense mechanism. So luckily for us, that tail is not going to drop away because they need that to feel safe and to make themselves defendable when it comes to predators trying to get them in the wild. Now, one thing about these is they do need a little bit more space than a bearded dragon, though. Well, I mean, I guess you could say not really. A lot of people argue that because the basic lower standards of bearded dragons has been going up lately from that basic 40-gallon that everybody says is required for them to the 4x2x2, which just seems to be a more commonly kept requirement for bearded dragon these days, which is about the exact same as you would want for something like this, specifically because these guys require a large amount of space because they actually require high amounts of heat, significantly higher than that of a bearded dragon. You can get their temps up to about 130 to no higher than like 140 degrees, but they like really hot basking spots, and this means that their enclosure has to be large enough to provide the gradient necessary for them to be okay in that. They need to be able to have that super hot oh my goodness, what are you doing? Stop it. They need to be able to have that hot spot while also being able to get away from it to a cooler spot, which is still also warmer than the average cool side to a lizard. These guys will still need a pretty warm cool side as well, and so when you try to keep it in something too small that doesn't allow for that gradient, then you can just get yourselves in a situation where your animals are not able to get comfortable and properly thermoregulate themselves. Now, when I first brought this guy home, he was small. You know, he's pretty small. He's not fully grown yet, so I assumed like a 20-gallon would be good for now before moving it up. But I quickly realized after talking to groups and getting my own heating and everything set up, realizing that to get that hot spot, that 20-gallon was not allowing it to get that hot while also cooling off the other side. The whole tank just got super hot and was not able to actually cool off the way it needed to. And so I needed to move it up into an enclosure that I had somewhat built, but I had to finish building it. It's a bit bigger. It's about 4 feet long. It's a little less than 2 feet deep. It's definitely not the 4x2x2, but it does allow a larger gradient so that I can have one side that gets really hot up to that 130 degrees temperature that it needs, with the rock buildup in there as well, so that they can bask on that rock which gets really hot, as well as the other side still stays cooler. It stays at like 80 to like 80-ish, it gets up to 90 at certain points, but usually stays at around 80 degrees on that cool side, so that, as you can see, like if you were to try to do that in a 20-gallon, you wouldn't be able to provide that. That tank is too small. It's going to have all that heat just stuck in there, and then on top of that, glass is just a little bit harder to keep that heat because it just releases it a lot more, but also, like I said, it just wasn't big enough to give a proper gradient. It was just hot all the way through. So now in this larger enclosure, he's allowed to have like one side that is solidly hot and the other side that cools off, but not so much, because they do still need a reasonably hot cool side too, hotter than a lot of other lizards that you might need to worry about. So when you're thinking about getting an enclosure for this guy, you want to just go ahead and go on up as big as you can get to that 4x2x2. I mean, mine is not quite that big. It's about 4 feet wide, and over a foot deep, and about 2 feet tall. So it's meeting the requirements for his size right now, but I will want to get him up to an actual 4x2x2 that gives that little bit more space, and then I can obviously adjust that heating to go with that space for now. But yeah, these guys require a lot of heat and space to be able to provide that heat gradient, while also making sure that they have all that they require, as well as they are definitely UV needers. They need that UV light, considering they spend a lot of time out in that nice hot sun, so they need a lot of UV as well. They're right up there with the bearded dragons with how much UV they need, so you want to provide a lot of that as well. So when you're thinking about getting an enclosure for this guy, you want to just go ahead and go on up as big as you can get to that 4x2x2. I mean, mine is not quite that big. It's about 4 feet wide, and over a foot deep, and about 2 feet tall. So it's meeting the requirements for his size right now, but I will want to get him up to an actual 4x2x2 that gives that little bit more space, and then I can obviously adjust that heating to go with that space for now. But yeah, these guys require a lot of heat and space to be able to provide that heat gradient, while also making sure that they have all that they require, as well as they are definitely UV needers. They need that UV light, considering they spend a lot of time out in that nice hot sun, so they need a lot of UV as well. They're right up there with the bearded dragons with how much UV they need, so you want to provide a lot of that as well. Now what's great about these guys is you don't really have to worry about too much with bugs. Now when they are babies, I think the misconception is had that they just don't eat bugs at all. But from what I have seen, actually when they are youth, like really young, they do tend to have a lot more protein intake. They do tend to eat a lot more bugs, and so you want to provide that for them. But the older they get, they do become mostly veggie eaters, like almost solely veggie eaters. Come back here. Where are you going? So they'll eat things like veggie greens, collard greens, mustard greens, not too much spinach and those type of things, and kale, but you definitely want to provide them with a lot of leafy greens and other vegetables like squashes and stuff like that, as well as they can eat things like seeds, some bird seeds, lentils, so that varies, so you might want to do a little bit more research on that, but they do tend to eat a lot of seeds in their natural environment. Now something that I did see a lot of people saying, and this was years ago, and I think a lot of people have steered away from this belief, was a lot of people believe that you could keep them solely on birdseed as their substrate, that because they eat a lot of seeds, so they can just walk around on it and eat it, and it's not going to be a big deal. So it's just kind of like, you know, living in a factory where you can just eat everything at all times. But I have heard that there can be such a thing where they're eating just too many seeds, and so keeping them on a solely seed-based substrate may not be the best route to take. I think we've steered. I think the community has shifted away from that. From what I've seen, that definitely seems to be a couple of years ago that people were really pushing that, and I think we've moved away from that a lot in the community so far. When it comes to care, we don't really want to keep them on that so much. So right now, what I have personally for this little guy, I do have it on there's the BioDude Terra Sahara or whatever. So I have that mixed with a little bit of actual Reptisan as well. Probably wasn't necessary with the Reptisan, but I chose to do it anyway, just to add that little extra digging factor for them. And yeah, like I said, you really want to provide like just a lot of some actual stones and like I have like a broken up, I had a tile, like a floor tile that I broke into multiple pieces, and I have it kind of positioned and stacked where he can get on top of it and do some basking, as well as go up underneath it as well. When you're thinking about doing this and you're getting your stones and your whatever to build this up, you really want to make sure that it's all super sturdy, because as they do their digging, that is going to shift, it's going to move, and you don't want your Uromastyx at risk of that during that digging, those rocks moving and falling on top of your animal and seriously damaging it. So when you're setting up all your enclosures and you're setting up all those stones and making like a nice little basking spot for it, you want to make sure that those are sturdy and set so that they're not going to shift and move too much where they're going to fall on your animal while it's doing its digging, because these guys do a lot of digging, all sorts of digging, just digs non-stop, and I think it's just what they like to do. They do a lot of burrowing in the wild, and so you want to provide them a deep enough substrate and a safe enough structure with that rock build that they're not going to damage themselves, but they can still do that natural behavior that they're going to do. Water, when it comes to this, guys, these guys don't necessarily need a water dish because they don't tend to drink from water. They get a lot of their water from their food intake, from the greens that you're going to be feeding them and all that, so you don't necessarily need to provide a water dish for them. If you ever feel like you really having a little bit of dehydration issue, I have seen that they do kind of absorb water through their skin, which is not usually something that happens with a lot of reptiles like this. They can't really do that. They're usually kind of like water resistant, but I do see that these guys can absorb a little bit of water through their skin, so if you ever want to just drip a little bit on their back or whatever to help them get that little bit of extra hydration, you can, but you don't necessarily need to provide a water dish with these guys because they do tend to, like I said, get a lot of their water intake from the food that they eat, the greens that you're going to be providing for them, and the veggies and all that. So not something to stress about too much when it comes to water with this amazing little species here. So really that's it. Like I said, it's not going to be a huge care video. I'm not going to go into all the different tips and the super care, you know, all that. I will do a different video on that a little bit down the line where I go into the full care of a Uromastyx as I get mine a little bit more mastered down and I feel a bit more confident with bringing that to you. But yeah, this is so cool. I'm so happy to have this little guy here. As you can see, they just really don't stop moving as much. They're really fun, really chill creatures. They got some sharp little nails, so definitely want to provide some stones and stuff inside of the enclosure that will help with that. But otherwise, they're really fun, easy to care for, really fun to handle, really fun to watch just run around and engage in their enclosure. Like, they're fun to just watch without even handling. Like, this guy is so cute. He just be all over the place in his little enclosure, and I absolutely love it. And so he will obviously get an upgrade in his enclosures for as he gets bigger, but this is what he is in for now, and he's doing really good in it. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up, get this little guy back inside of his enclosure so that he can chill a little bit. You all take care of yourselves, love your loved ones, love your reptiles, and you all keep spreading those herbs.